Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood. I'm Bee.
And I'm Zack.
And this week, we read the first chapter of Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters.
Yes, and it was very super nautical. No, it wasn't nautical. We haven't even gotten off the boat yet.
It was somewhat nautical. There was a mention of a beach town, right?
In Florida.
Yeah, Florida. It's so funny because I guessed that it was Florida before he said Florida. So yeah, this is a pretty short chapter. This was the chapter that I accidentally glanced at when I was trying to read the final chapter of The Lightning Thief. I was like, wait a second, what? Like, skipped ahead.
Yeah, it is actually a very strong opening for a chapter. Like, when I think of, like, sequels, I always try to, like, look at them as how does it open up with a bang, or how is it not kind of like a rehash of the first book or movie. I usually go by movies because usually when it comes to sequels, it's really hard to open up a sequel without it just being pretty much the same thing in the beginning of the first movie. Like, you all recognize this, don't you? Because that's kind of like one of the hard things when it comes to sequels. I think a sequel should always open up with a bang, and I think this is a good version of a sequel opening up with a bang.
Yeah, it's exciting. There's like a lot of in media res kind of stuff going on where you're like immediately thrown into action because of like the very dramatic dream that Percy has. There was a little bit of like, I feel like this is super typical of children's series where, especially I think in the first few books, they'll tend to really rehash like very obvious things about the plot in the last book, where it's like, Riptide is the name of my sword and I'm going back to my favorite place, Camp Half-Blood, and my friend is Grover, like explaining all these things that you obviously would know if you read the first book, but not counting on the fact that you know those things.
Yes, and I'm also a human that breathes regular oxygen and everything. You all knew that already,
but
didn't
you knew that already. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's kind of like the weird thing I've always looked at when it comes to like young adult series, because it doesn't happen with like certain books, but it happens majority in this. I think the reason why is the way they market it is in case a kid picks up this book, they don't have to go back to read the original book, which makes no sense.
Yeah. I think it's because sometimes people go to like a library or something and they see a book and they don't really know that the number on the side or whatever, that it's a series. Like, this has happened. I've heard this story multiple times. This has happened with people with unfortunate events for sure. I've heard stories of them, people picking up like the third, fourth book and not knowing what's going on, but being like, wow, it's very interesting that they chose to do this. I know my partner Elliot, that's how they first started reading Percy Jackson, is they like grabbed like the second or third book and were like, oh, this is a bold choice that they didn't even introduce this stuff.
I believe it also is a thing about marketing almost, because it's like, you don't have to, because it does that with the first two Harry Potter books as well. The third one, it kind of like veers away from that. But I think it's only acceptable for the second book. Afterwards, you should never do that because it's almost annoying.
It's like that at that point, you should just go back and read it. Yeah, like if you're beyond the second book, like you really probably missed a lot of stuff.
Like they did that in Series of Unfortunate Events up until the fifth
book, where they would just really rehash like, and Violet like to invent things, and like really obvious characterization stuff that pretty much anybody would know if they read any of the first few books. So it's a little weird sometimes where it feels like they're spoon feeding you like different plot points, but I don't know. I guess they have to do that because that's like how YA works to some extent.
For me, I've always found it a little bit annoying at times, especially when it's like you're trying to read a book series, because you don't really do that with movies. Not necessarily. Like in Back to the Future 2, they open up where the last movie ended. Though, when it comes to like a sequel, it always needs to have that punch to it, kind of like in Back to the Future. Like the beginning set piece of that is they go to the future and have all this wonderful stuff. Whereas, I guess also in Star Wars with The Empire Strikes Back, it opens up with the Battle of Hoth, which is amazing. Here, it actually opens up similar to that. Like, that's why I don't like sequels when they open up. It's kind of like the rehash of the first book or movie.
And it's exactly what you expect. I think The Dream does a good job in adding drama to an otherwise... I mean, there's other... Like, the plot's moving along in the first chapter already. Like, you get to hear about... He may not be returning to Camp Half-Blood as soon as he thought, and his mom kind of has this conversation and hints to something going on at Camp Half-Blood that Chiron called. Yeah, so like they're already getting into it, but I think all of like the dramatic stuff that happens with seeing Grover running and him like saying that he needs to warn people, like that adds like some tension that otherwise wouldn't be in an introductory chapter.
Which I think is also really important when it comes to like an action adventure series like that, is having the beginning of the book should always open up with like a bang like this. Even the first book opens up with the line, "Hey, I didn't want to be a half-blood."
Yeah.
It kind of like makes the reader want to like read it more. Whereas here it's like it's dark and gloomy and I had the same weird dream where, you know, Grover's running through and there's like a hurricane going on, which, you know, if you read The Lightning Thief, it's like, oh, is this something that has to do with the gods such as Poseidon or Zeus? And there's like a nice bit of like mystery to it.
I liked this chapter. It was short, but it fit a lot of stuff into it. It made me excited to read the next chapter. It took like every fiber of my being to not continue reading because I was just like maybe not disappointed. Like I was like, oh, I guess I got the reading done for this episode. But then I remembered, of course, I can't read ahead or it kind of ruins like the whole me trying to guess what's going to happen thing. And I'm like, oh man, I already read these 8 pages or whatever of this first chapter. I really wanted to move on to the next one.
But which makes a really good book is when you have to like force yourself not to read ahead, especially for a podcast that is a read-along podcast.
Yeah, it was a real page turner. So I think we mentioned last episode that the first chapter's title is My Best Friend Shops for a Wedding Dress, which, again, we've talked about Rick Riordan's pithy chapter titles before. He loves to, like, misdirect you with the detail he chooses to include.
I wouldn't call it like misdirection. I would call it kind of like what a magician does with misdirection is you're so focused on one thing you don't realize that the magician or someone's doing another thing.
There must be like other examples of this where like episode titles or something are meant to seem dramatic or weird. Like why who's getting married? Like it totally confuses you, but then obviously it's something totally different where in his dream Grover takes refuge in a bridal shop. Like it's loosely true.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, so when it comes to like episode titles or naming episode titles, like I always think of like Star Trek and how they have like very like weird titles or stuff that either are very self-explanatory or not. Same as with Doctor Who and having like the way they name titles for their episodes, because there's a lot of episodes that just don't make sense until like you like actually, it might just be like a single word or it might be like a sentence. And that's what I like about stuff. I mean, I think it's kind of like the title should always be like the jumping on point for anything. It shouldn't be like you should focus your entire attention on like a title that maybe the author like wrote in 2 seconds while he was like thinking of like clever things to say.
Well, it's really funny because I'm used to like reading Unfortunate Events books and like those chapters are not titled, they're just numbered. And I guess it's a little funny to like go back into the shtick of having chapters named things, because I feel like that's way more common in kids books, I want to say, where it's like a funny chapter name or it's like a very intense descriptor of what's going on. Like, you know, we talked with the Real Weird Sisters recently on an episode and they mentioned the final chapter of the Philosopher's / Sorcerer's Stone, you get the idea, is the man with 2 faces, you know, like something really sinister and spooky sounding.
I think you gotta like think about it like as a kid when you're like reading something and it's like, I gotta go to bed, or like, man, my life sucks, I have like school in the morning, I'm only like a 6th grader.
Oh god, if I woke up tomorrow and I was back in 6th grade, I don't know what I would do with myself.
You just wait to grow up?
I would scream.
This is like some weird movie. It's like, what is it, 16 again? That just sounds terrifying. But it's like what I was saying about this was when you have like a kid reading a book that has a very short attention span, like getting those hooks in really quickly, like really, really help.
Because, I mean, like, the way we always talk about how the way we're reading this book is chapter by chapter. And a lot of times that's the way kids read books because they're assigned a chapter for like a week at school, or like they'll read a chapter a night, like with their parents or something like that. And so I think giving a compelling chapter title is like, oh, well, next time we'll see what this means kind of thing. And that's like what we're doing on the show.
I always think of like a mom tucking their kids into bed and then they just pull out the gigantic big book of like fun stuff and they just start reading it. Kind of like chapter 1 sounds much more like boring than, come along children, we're going to be reading The Man with 2 Faces.
Yeah, I imagine at that point your parent would be doing like spooky voices or something.
And then afterwards we're going to read a feel-good series of stories, you know, the Brothers Grimm type of stories.
Yeah, we're going to read Bridge to Terabithia. A nice, lighthearted fare.
I have a story about the Bridge to Terabithia. My friend gave me that book when I was like kind of like being down because of like a breakup. And like, oh, this is gonna be like a fun, super happy book. And then I read it and I was just like, I hate you.
I actually haven't read the book. I've only seen the movie, but yeah, it's a gut punch.
It like blindsides you, and it's like one of the like the way it was marketed as well. If you didn't know what the twist was this is going to be a happy-go-lucky like fantasy movie.
Yeah, like whimsical story of them like being in the forest. Yeah, it's not. It's not what you think it is at all.
I wouldn't even want to spoil that one because it's actually I consider it a really good book only during a certain situation.
Yeah, would you do that as a bonus episode? Because I think that would be kind of interesting.
I'd do that as a bonus episode. Yeah. The weird thing when it comes to, because this is the episode, we only have so many short things to say about it. You know, we'll get into like the what happens on, but you can almost say it in like a sentence. Is when it comes to like writing sequels, I feel like the challenging thing about it is how can you make it different, but also like similar to the same with like having the characters where they started at the end of that book, kind of begin with this new book.
Right, because if you're trying to build a certain, I guess, rapport between the reader and the characters where you want them to, like, relate to them and, like, feel a sense of connection. And so you can't make it too different because you're trying to, like, recapture the magic of that first book. But you also need to switch it up enough or, like, escalate the drama to the point where it doesn't feel like a retread of the stuff that we already read in the last book. So far, I think it's doing a good job. Again, it's like such a small sliver.
It is like a small sliver of a chapter, but I think I like about this so far is with it, you know, Percy Jackson in the first book, he became a completely different person or like, you know, a much better person than when he started out with. It's kind of like that weird transition, like how do you take like the life lesson that he learned at the end of the last book and apply it to this book?
Right.
There's like movies like, I'm going to use my favorite example is The Matrix. At the end of The Matrix, Neo becomes a god. And how do you go past that in the second one? Oh, by depowering him and making him the same person as he was at the beginning of the first Matrix. He didn't learn any lesson. He just got stupider.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like that's kind of like the one thing like when you look at like a sequel or something, it's like, how does the character stay the same character rather than just completely altering him for the needs of the sequel?
Yeah, then he needs to stay the same character, but he also needs to retain, like, everything that we worked towards in the last book. So he can't seem as incompetent or unaware of demigod stuff as he was in the first book, because that wouldn't be consistent with all of the stuff that he learned. He, like, went on a whole cross-country adventure with his friends and, you know, had a fight with Ares on a beach and went to the underworld and was betrayed by Luke. Like, a lot of stuff happened. And I do think that even in this short chapter, it conveys a sense of comfort in Percy, like a sort of stability in his identity where he really likes being a demigod, like the way he talks about how he sleeps every night with Riptide under his pillow and how his mom asked him to not use deadly weapons in the house ever since he threw a javelin and took out her china cabinet. You know, it's sort of it's like a nice little details like that sort of establish that. They haven't really talked about any of his demigod stuff. Like he even says, oh, we try not to talk about that stuff when he's living his normal life. But I think he's more stable in who he is as a person. And that's like a really great character development detail, because in the beginning of The Lightning Thief, he calls himself a loser. He feels really like lost and confused, constantly going from school to school. He's having like serious issues in learning because of, obviously he has ADHD and dyslexia, but also, you know, being a demigod, he didn't know all of these things about himself. And here he's like way more self-assured. He talks about how he finally had a normal school year where he could go to school the entire year and nothing crazy or weird happens. And then, you know, his mom makes a celebratory blue breakfast, and him being like, oh yeah, that my mom's way of celebrating is to say, if breakfast can be blue in a world where Percy Jackson can finish a year of school, you know?
I agree with that with a lot. I mean, when it comes to Percy Jackson, I think one of the central themes of the books, besides, you know, it's okay to have these, you know, disabilities, you consider them superpowers, is that kind of like building confidence in oneself as well. Like if we look at The Lightning Thief, you can see that at the beginning of it, Percy's very like, he like punches himself. Like he doesn't like himself. He has all these problems and he kind of like lives in like a awful situation. And then throughout the course of the book, he kind of realizes that, you know, everything is small potatoes because I literally just saved the world and went to like the underworld. You know, having that confidence boost, I think is really important, especially for a kid. Like, hey, your life might suck a year ago, but it might not suck now.
Again, I don't want to like use the Harry Potter comparison too much as a crutch, but it's like a perfect comparison.
I mean, for us, it's kind of like the default at this point, a little bit. Like it's more like a comfort zone. Like we can have this.
It's a comfort zone. Well, also everyone knows it. And in the sense that the transformation that the character undergoes is incredibly similar, because he starts off, and I mean, the difference is Percy has his mom. Well, Harry doesn't have anybody. He's just in this home with the Dursleys. But it's a similar idea where he's struggling, he's unhappy, he doesn't feel like he fits in anywhere, and then he realizes someone like shows up and says, oh, the reason you haven't been able to fit into this world is because you're actually designed to function in a different world. The reason that you have ADHD and dyslexia is actually you're a demigod. Like that, your functioning actually comes from the fact that you're special and you belong with these special people. And just that alone, like the sense of community and understanding why he is the way he is, really like emboldens him as a person. Then of course he like goes on this whole quest and comes back, and he's a hero. He's a hero like Harry is a hero. He's a celebrity, this, you know, this magical kid who swoops in and saves the day. And that's like a complete contrast to, you know, just being a nobody in the first book. And it's like a similar character development. And it's like, it's nice to see, I guess. I think it's a common character development thing that you find in kids' books, because there are a lot of kids who feel like left out, or like they don't have any place to go, they don't have a community, they don't fit in anywhere. And it's like this encouraging narrative to say, maybe you will find your people, you'll find where you belong, and then you'll feel happier and more sure of yourself. So I like that lesson.
It's really funny because while you're talking about this, I'm thinking of it actually a real life thing that happened to me. And, you know, as much as podcasters like talking about themselves, I will bring it up this one time because I don't really like talking, you know, about personal stuff. But as a kid, I grew up in a place where it was like I was moving constantly. I didn't have any friends. And the only constant in my life was watching a lot of terrible, terrible, terrible horror movies. And like I fell in love with like this particular genre that I'm not going to say right now because I know you're all going to Google it and soon we have people the age of 12. But I'm just going to say I fell in love with this particular company of B movies, yes. And I had the opportunity when I was 15 to 16 to go fly to New York, to Buffalo, to work on a film. And like for me, it was like I was like really worried like no one's gonna like me, no one's gonna do any of this stuff. The second I got there, I felt like I was home for the first time. Like I had met people from so many different walks of life, so many different, you know, ideologies. Like we loved the same things, we wanted to do the same thing. And, you know, at that moment, I kind of realized, like, I didn't really have friends at that point, but I realized at that moment in time, like, these are going to be my friends. These are going to be lifelong people that I hang out with. And you know what? That's okay. When I go home, I'll still have these people. I'll still know that, you know, there's more people out there that are like me, because it's like we're all the same people.
The narrative rings true. It's like a true thing that I think most people, I mean, even just minor things like when you are 12 years old, you're going through puberty, you're like figuring out like who are the people that you want to trust. And like, of course, Percy Jackson is like heavily themed about that. Like who can you trust? Who are your friends? What kind of person do you want to be? And that's like all of the stuff that you're asking yourself when you're 12 years old, you know, when you're starting to become like a full-fledged person, you're developing and like learning stuff about you. And I think that everyone can relate to that to some extent, that it could tell the story of like, were you just a nerd? Were you just like quiet? Maybe you have a learning disability. Maybe you're like LGBTQ and you feel like left out in some way. Like there's so many different ways in which kids feel isolated. And then it's like encouraging to like tell a story that says that that's not always the case, that you can like grow up and like grow into your own and find your community.
Yeah, no, it's like when I was president of the anime club for a year, I would see people that were really shy.
I just did a spit take. When you said when I was president of the anime club, I almost did a spit take because I thought you were joking, but you were telling the truth. Okay.
So when I was the president of the anime club for a year, what I noticed was we had a lot of freshmen come in and they were very shy, very, you know, they weren't really adjusting to school really well because they went from like being the top dog to suddenly being like the small little teeny bopper with people that are like almost 18 that have beards and cars. And they'd go into the anime club and their faces would light up and they'd be so happy because like, these are my people. We are going to hang out. We're going to talk about anime and we're going to have a lot of fun. And that's like one of the great things is like when you find that I hate to use the word click because I really hate that word. When you find that group of people that you can really connect with, especially like I think that's a really good theme about Percy Jackson is, finding your friends, but like realizing like we're not so different, you and I. But that's like one of the great things about Percy Jackson. And I guess moving forward with the series, it's like I consider that one of the top themes of these books is, finding out who you are as a person. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be a lot of anything. You can be anything you want to be. And someone out there or people out there will always accept you no matter what. Because there's people in those similar circumstances.
And I really do think that comes through even in this first chapter, like the way that he talks about himself, the way he's like settled into who he is as a person.
He feels comfortable in his own skin now rather than he was a year ago.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm excited to see like how that like affects his interactions with characters. I could almost see like a trajectory of him being like maybe too cocky or too full of himself because he gets so like self-assured, like, oh, I'm a demigod, I know everything.
B, do you know what that word is in Greek tragedies?
Do you mean the, like, hamartia, like the fatal flaw? I think we've mentioned this before.
He's got hubris.
Yeah, hubris, right, yeah, hubris.
Which is a very big thing in Greek tragedies, is the person that has much hubris.
So yeah, I could definitely see that being an aspect of Percy's story, because I could see how a little bit of community and a little bit of encouragement is good for him, but I could see his personality, like, latching onto that and being like, oh, well, now I'm Poseidon's son, I know everything.
I'm a part of the big three.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, it's like a Harry Potter, like, oh, well, I am the chosen one.
Oh, I'm about to say that, like, I'm sorry I have to say this, but even in Harry Potter, there's a part in the books where Harry Potter gets a big head about himself. Like, he kind of, like, accepts his fame. And he's like, oh, I'm Harry Potter. Like, I'm such, like, an angsty teen. Yeah, he says, guys, I am the chosen one after all. And I just want to, like, throw up. I mean, that's such like an arc, especially for a teenager, because come on, B. Even as teenagers, we thought we were like the greatest people in the world.
Well, I don't know if I thought that when I was a teenager.
Well, we thought that we were right all the time. We're so angsty.
Yeah, like the sort of righteous anger that you have when you're like 13 or something, where you're just like, oh, well, no one understands me, that kind of thing. And
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like the angsty, like we were so angsty. Like,
yeah.
People that in our listenership that hasn't reached puberty yet, you'll get to it. Whatever you do, don't shave your head and think you're going to make the world's greatest version of MCR.
The world's greatest version of MCR is MCR.
I know. That's what I thought of as a kid.
You thought that you were going to make a My Chemical Romance cover band?
I almost did.
Jeez. I mean, God, we would have really been friends in middle school, wouldn't we?
Dude, like, when I was like a teenager, I had shaved my head. I had gotten a mohawk. I had listened to nothing but maybe MCR, Linkin Park, Dashboard Confessional.
Oh my God.
And I had also started listening to like Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then afterwards, I started listening to like Weezer. And I finally got into like the heavy metal phase of my life.
Well, that's like the other side of the coin, right? Of like when you're around 12, I would say, I think you start to kind of cycle through phases, and not to like even like condescendingly talk down to anybody that age or whatever, to be like, oh, well, you don't know who you are. But I think that just like naturally you go through different like phases of like dressing a certain way or hanging out with certain people, listening to certain music, because you yourself are trying to figure out like what feels most representative of who you are as a person, and you're changing constantly as a person like at that age. So I do think that it lends itself well to like the story of, oh, Percy, he gets confidence, now he's gonna be like, oh, well, this is my new identity, I'm a demigod, everyone likes me there. That's like, Percy has changed a lot as a character so far in this new book. He's really excited to get to Camp Half-Blood for obvious reasons, because it's like, that's where, I mean, he even says to his mom, like, that's where I'm the most safe, right? And I think he means that in a few ways.
Well, that's where it's like, Percy, like, feels like he's the most normal. Like, even, like, in the mortal world, like, he probably doesn't now, it's, like, almost the opposite. Like, originally in Lightning Thief, he didn't fit in being, like, a half-blood. Now it's almost the exact opposite. Like, he doesn't fit in as a mortal, he fits in as a half-blood.
Right, like, he he's settled into the idea that he's a half-blood, so the idea of not being able to go back is really upsetting to him.
I mean, I would be upset too if it's like you look forward to, like, let's say you want to go to Disneyland and all of a sudden like it rains that day and like, what? I want to go.
Camp is actually a really good example because I think there are people who go to, like, you know, the same summer camp every year for like years and years, and they see their same friends. And if you
I went to a Jewish summer camp for like 6 years in a row.
Did you enjoy that?
And I loved it.
Yeah. I went to different summer camps that I wasn't the biggest fan of. Though one of my best friends, who my longest friend, who I've known since the summer before 4th grade, we met at camp. And now I'm gonna be in her wedding party, like, next year. Any kind of camp has kind of an intense experience where you form, like, really strong bonds with people and you make, like, friendships.
You mean Stockholm Syndrome?
A little bit, but, you know, like, you're doing activities together constantly and you see each other every day. I mean, that's why, like, literally my best friend Stacy, I met at camp and we're still friends, like, years and years later, over a decade later.
I guess going back to the chapter and finally, like, talking about it after, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like, it's really hard to talk about a very short chapter without trying to address more things, but it's also really hard to talk about the first chapter of a book because it's the starting off point. So this chapter opens up and Percy is having a terrible nightmare. His best friend Grover is apparently in Florida. He's in there deep, apparently, because he's gone off. He hasn't seen his best friend since July, and now Grover is now running through the streets of St. Augustine, and he's freaking out. There's something chasing him. And the first thing he does is he jumps right into, like, a wedding gown store.
Yeah, St. Augustine Bridal Boutique.
I'm surprised why is no one outside? I guess maybe because it's a hurricane?
Yeah, I imagine because it's a hurricane. Also, it's a dream, so I don't know if it's, like, a vision or it's, like, I don't know exactly how it works.
But anyways, Grover's being chased, and for some reason, Percy has smell-o-vision.
And he could smell the monsters, yeah.
He can smell the monsters, and it smells like rotten meat and, like, Taco Bell.
Yeah, he's like, if they had somehow eaten a lot of Mexican food, I think he said, is something sort of like that description.
I was like, oh, that's so gross, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a gross description.
I love my Mexican food, but if you eat too much of it, you do get, like, the Taco Bell, like, stank.
The Taco Bell smell.
Yeah. Probably smells like refried beans and sadness.
Probably. After his dream, Percy bolts upright and he, like, talks to his mom because it's his last day of school, so that means he's returning to Camp Half-Blood. And this is when we start to realize that his mom has maybe some bad news for him, because he starts talking about, after...
Yeah, because she made a bunch of, like, blue food of everything. She made blue pancakes, I think blue milk...
Blue waffles, blue eggs for breakfast. She's funny that way, celebrating special occasions with blue food. I think it's her way of saying anything is possible. So I think his mom knows something about what's going on, because when he says that he thinks Grover's in trouble because of the dream he had, she seems to get really stressed. She does say that Grover's a big satyr now. If there were a problem, I'm sure we would have heard from camp, and then she has heard from camp, because then later she mentions that Chiron had called and told her that there's been issues. That she's not really specific about what those issues are.
No, what it means by, like, calling, did, like, Chiron, like, take out, like, his old-timey, like, rotary phone, or, like, 1980s...
Or was it, like, an iris message, I guess? I guess he could use a phone. He doesn't need to use an iris message to talk to a random mortal lady.
He does have human hands. Like, oh, no, I can't reach the buttons with my hooves. He's like, hey, Percy's mom... So, I got some bad news.
So yeah, then he says, Mom, this problem at camp, could it have anything to do with my dream about Grover? She wouldn't meet my eyes. We'll talk about it this afternoon, dear. I'll explain as much as I can. Reluctantly, I told her goodbye. I jogged downstairs to catch the number 2 train. I didn't know it at the time, but my mom and I would never get to have our afternoon talk. In fact, I wouldn't be seeing home for a long, long time.
Which is very ominous, because again, it goes back to, like, the weird thing of, it's like, is this book series supposed to be like a third-person narrative, or is it supposed to be kind of like almost like a diary?
Right, because it's coming from a future perspective.
Which is weird, because if you remember, it's like sometimes it does this, and then sometimes it doesn't do this.
Yeah, you're right. I guess it reads sort of like a diary, but it reads like it's at least long enough. It takes place after the events of the book that you're reading. So it's like shifted one book ahead or something almost.
I think also it's kind of like one of those things that's almost like the unreliable narrator almost, because he does give all this information, but also some of it is in the sense of like Percy Jackson seeing it at the same time as he's writing it. Like, this is what I felt like.
Oh,
but
yeah,
also
yeah.
it's like he has like a weird description of it too. It's such a weird little like writing device, but which I'm fine with because it works though.
In the first chapter of The Lightning Thief, I think I was a little confused about what time period the narrator is coming from. And obviously narrator's Percy.
I believe there's like fan theories speculating when this is. It's kind of like maybe Percy Jackson as an older person writing this.
Like as an adult, so it's like after the entire series, and he's just recalling this.
This happened in Cirque du Freak, where it's the main hero, or Darren Shan, explaining to the audience what his life is. And it's the same way. It's like such a weird writing device, I've always found. Unless it's like a person telling the story that they have different information. But in this, he doesn't give all the necessary information, if that makes any sense. Like he lets the mystery unfold unless it's like a writer trying to write a good story.
He does allude to certain things, but it's not like he says, and as you know, Luke was you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't say that like in the story, so he leaves the dramatic tension in.
I mean, I guess Percy Jackson is a writing major.
Yeah, I guess it's this idea that like maybe he's telling this story for the sake of entertainment, because otherwise he'd be like, I wondered who the person who would betray me is. I did find that out later, and he was the, you know what I mean? Like, because there's a lot of stuff that he has to guess at what the oracle means, and then it's gradually revealed through the text. But
it's almost like in The Emperor's New Groove, and how Cusco has to like pause time and kind of gives like a play-by-play.
Yeah, you're Emperor's New Groove. Yeah, that'd be really great.
Yeah, it's almost a bit like that.
Or it's like the Lemony Snicket thing of him just being like in front of the scene explaining what's happening. There's something strange about it being the character that it's happening to. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like he already experienced this. But it also gives you the sense that like you know that he's going to survive for a while. Like you know that nothing too terrible is going to happen to Percy because he's telling the story. There's no... Because if it was like another narrator, you could say, oh, what's going to happen to Percy? Is something terrible going to happen?
In Series of Unfortunate Events, it's ambiguous because it's another person writing the story.
Because it's another person, exactly. So you can say, oh, well, much later, Klaus was like this. But
obviously, the person survives to write their own tale.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that it almost guarantees a certain level of stability with the character.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in Name of the Wind, or The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, the whole story is told in a way where it's both a third person for the beginning of the book, and then when the main character starts to tell a story, it switches to a first person, but he does it in a way where he leaves in like dramatic tension. He's almost like an unreliable narrator. Like he's trying to like make the story as interesting as possible for a person to write it down.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I like how like sinister it is almost. It's like I'm never going to see my mom for a very long time.
Right, because it could be something. I mean, I hope that something bad doesn't happen to her, because the whole first book is her being saved, so.
Percy Jackson, oh man, I gotta go save my mom again. Like he like calls up Hades. Hey buddy, remember what happened last summer? I kind of need her back again. Could you give her back to me?
Oh, another important thing about this chapter is after he says that he won't see his mom for a long time, he keeps seeing the weird shadow of like a silhouette of a person. He saw it on his drinking glass when he first wakes up from his nightmare, and then he sees it again on the brick of the building across from their apartment when he goes to leave for school.
What do you think that possibly could be?
Oh, geez. I feel like it must have something to do with Kronos or Luke.
I mean, it's very sinister. It's almost as if things are happening all at once. Because there's apparently a problem at the camp. Grover may or may not be in danger, and now something or someone or some creature is now following Percy.
Yeah, and we know that it's real, too, because it's not just in his dream. It makes appearances outside. Like, at first he's like, oh, maybe he's still in the dream when he wakes up and he thinks he sees something in his drinking glass. But then when he walks out and sees something, like, across the street, and then it vanishes, like, then that's kind of an indicator that it's actually something magical is going on. It's not just his dreams.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this chapter really interesting. It's almost like, is it a dream? Is it not? And then it goes to, Well, now we have things to think about. The camp's apparently, like, not safe. Again, it's almost like Chamber of Secrets.
It totally is. I was thinking that too, but it's like a Hogwarts.
Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts. Hogwarts is not safe for Harry Potter.
It's 100% Chamber of Secrets. These first two books are really following a certain Harry Potter formula that is almost undeniable.
It's a bit different in Chamber of Secrets, where Harry starts off the book as like a sad, miserable, sad sack of a boy who now lives in his spare room.
Sad sack of a boy.
And his awful parents, the Dursleys, have basically forbid him from, doing anything, talking about magic, and he's gotten no letters from his friends or family. He's just been,
Yeah, he's like isolated. I was just thinking this also, like the Harry Potter example of like, oh, Hogwarts is supposed to be the safe place, but then of course it eventually becomes a place that danger seeps through. The same thing with Camp Half-Blood. It's supposed to be the one place where Percy is safe. And then, of course, now that there's something going on there where it's, like, unsafe, I feel like that's definitely another children's lit thing where it's, like, children are creatures of habit to an extent where they are very regimented as far as their time. They're always constantly going to school or they're going to camp or,
Well, I mean, okay, so what I think about this is both Hogwarts and Camp Half-Blood are, like, the idea of normalcy. It's almost, I'm going to be using a metaphor. They're almost like the metaphor for like normalcy. The second they get threatened, it's like you're taking away the thing that, truly makes us how we feel. The only place that we feel normal, and all of a sudden, it's no longer safe. That means you're threatening our version of normalcy and how, this is how we train.
Yeah, well, it was like the new baseline of normal that they give to Percy because Percy felt so ostracized with living with mortals, and then for him to like have the access to this community, we're just talking about how important that is. So for that to be threatened is like, it's similar to the Hogwarts comparison. It's similar to like, really the point I was getting at is that, kids, they spend all year going to school and then maybe they go to summer camp, and so this is like the world that they live in. They expect to go to these places where they have their friends and they have their safety and they have their regimented time, and to have that threatened is like very stressful, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with that, especially like when you're a high school student and all of a sudden you graduate, you kind of lose that weird sense of normalcy. It's like you're supposed to go to the school for 4 or 5 years, and then all of a sudden you're not allowed to go there anymore. It's like such a weird feeling. I know people that got really sad. Like they went back to high school the next year just to hang out with people.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a sense of comfort in being able to know, oh, I can go back to this place. So I do think that it's like a good plot point for a second book in a book series to be like, oh, this place that we taught you was the one safe place in the world is actually under threat also. Nothing is safe.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, especially like I can use the argument of at Disneyland when they change a ride or something, people feel they get angry or they feel threatened because it's like you're taking the one thing that is almost like a constant and you're changing or like making it not this what you remember it as.
Yeah, exactly. If people don't like change, people like to be able to expect a certain consistency.
Which I would say, change is all right as long as the thing that is replacing it is better.
Yeah. And obviously, that's not the case in Camp Half-Blood because it's quoted as like an issue or a problem. I forget what language they use.
I would imagine Creon wouldn't call Percy's mom unless it was something super dire. I mean, it's like, come on. Camp Half-Blood has gigantic lava pits and cleaning harpies.
Exactly. So it's something worse than that.
Is it going to be like Footloose where they ban dancing in this small little Camp Half-Blood? Is it going to take like kid version of like Kevin Bacon to fix all this?
Yep, exactly.
Now I'm imagining like Kevin Bacon's like adult head on a kid's body.
What I was imagining is Kevin Bacon is like a centaur, but instead it's a pig.
Oh no. So B, I think seeing how we're just starting this book, what do you think is going to be happening throughout the rest of this book? Because we did that last time where we asked you before that. And what do you think, what are your predictions if you were the Oracle? What would you see into the future? What do you think is going to happen?
So you want my like general prediction for the whole book?
General prediction for the whole book, but also what do you think is happening to Camp Half-Blood?
All right. So Camp Half-Blood, I think that there is some hints of stuff going on because there was some anger going on with Ares' cabin after Percy goes on his quest. And so then also it's Luke who betrays him, who's part of Hermes' cabin. So I feel like intra-cabin issues of people disagreeing and like being against Percy and like not all being ideologically united as like demigods might be an issue. That's like my first guess as to what's going on. Another guess would be like that it's been compromised somehow and isn't protected from monsters the way it used to be. It could be a combination of those things.
Yeah, those are some pretty good predictions. Now, what do you think possibly what the Sea of Monsters could entail?
Sea of Monsters, right. Oh, well, I guess Sea of Monsters.
Because each book, this is not really a spoiler, but do you want me to tell you something that if you look at each book,
yeah,
they're kind of like stories of Greek mythology.
Right. Is there a sea monster? Or is it more like just the pure amount of monsters? Because again, if Camp Half-Blood is compromised, then it's just like actual monsters are flooding in to the camp and attacking people. Well, that is
true, but I'm looking at it like, I'll give you this. So each Percy Jackson book is almost like a modern version of a Greek myth.
Right.
What do you think the Lightning Thief would be?
Oh, geez. I don't know what the Lightning Thief is, actually. Because, I mean, like, it's Perseus and Medusa, but it's other things, too. Because he has, like, different encounters with a lot of magical creatures.
That's just something it's something to keep in mind while we're doing this.
Right. Because it's, like, it bases itself off of a few stories, I guess. I don't know, like, the general story arc. I feel like I don't know enough about Greek mythology to say.
Okay, then this is going to be so much fun to do. So listeners, don't say anything, because I know you're all giggling right now.
I know. I don't even... Like, all I know is, like, Hercules, I guess. But even that, I'm thinking of the Disney cartoon.
Overall, I like this chapter a little bit. I think the dream segments were really fun. I feel like, the sinister nature of the story, kind of like setting it up to be these ideas being proposed, same as with, like, the foreshadowing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on in this chapter for a few short pages. It makes good use of a lot of different stuff. I feel excited to like get back into the world of Percy Jackson to see like how it escalates and like what we learn about this universe, I guess. Yeah, like I said, it made me really excited to read this book.
The fun part about this is that we never actually read the back of the book, so we're going to find this out.
We never did.
We're not going to do that at all. We're never going to read the back of any of these books just for B's sake.
Yeah. Well, because I actually, I'm reading the ebook for this one, so.
I have, like, the book in front of me. I really like the cover, but I'm not going to show it to you.
All right.
You can look at it if you want to, but, viewer beware, you're in for a scare.
All right. Yeah, I don't have, like, the most specific guesses about what's going to happen in this book, but I do have a general idea of maybe what's going on at Camp Half-Blood.
What did you think of this chapter?
I really liked it. Like I said, I think it gets a lot done in a few short pages. I think it really sets up what's going to happen. Again, there's even like a lot of foreshadowing about like, oh, well, Percy's not going to return back home, so something's going to happen, obviously. There's just like a lot of baseline plot stuff that they get out of the way really quickly in like a very streamlined, exciting way. I think that this was done really well. Yeah, I have no complaints with this chapter.
Now, B, do you want to know what the name of the next chapter is going to be?
Yeah, I can see it right here. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the next chapter is I Played Dodgeball with Cannibals.
Very self-explanatory title there, B. I don't think there needs to be any room for interpretation. Percy Jackson plays with cannibals.
I don't think that they're actually cannibals, maybe? Because he's going to school, right? Because he's meeting his friend. God, what's the name of his friend?
Tyson.
He's meeting Tyson. Tyson Chicken Strips.
Tyson Chicken Strips. I think like Mike Tyson.
Like the brand. Anyway, he's meeting Tyson because he's going to school, so I guess he's going to play dodgeball at school, and then the cannibals are going to be... I think that it might just be, like, metaphorically people who are ruthless, I don't know. Or maybe it could be the opposite, where he's not actually playing dodgeball, and he's fighting, like, cannibals, but he's throwing things, and it's like dodgeball. Who knows? These are my guesses, but I'm just taking shots in the dark.
Or, like, it's like Percy Jackson meets Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, he just, like, meets Hannibal.
Or just a bunch of, like, famous cannibals throughout history.
Yeah, Ed Gein, all those scary people.
Oh, no.
Yikes.
Like, this is supposed to be a kid's book.
Yeah, he just like runs into Mads Mikkelsen. He's like, "Hello, it's nice to have you for dinner." Would it kill a human to eat a demigod?
No, this is the thing that I was thinking about, B, and I want to talk to you about this while on air. And if anyone has the question to this or the answer, I'd really appreciate it. What if a demigod gave a mortal a blood transfusion? Because apparently it's in their blood.
Right, yeah. I think we talked about this. I think they would probably die because they have different blood.
Not even if like the demigod has O blood?
No, because I don't think they have the same blood types as people, probably.
Do you think that their white blood cells are just going to attack them?
Yeah, probably. I mean, like...
Well, this sounds like the beginning of like a fan fiction where like someone gets like a blood transfusion, all of a sudden they become a demigod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they'd become a demigod, I'm not sure. Or they would die.
I think they'd become a demigod.
Really? Because I think they would die. Because if they eat, like, god food, then they die.
Yeah, but they're not eating god food at the point.
But it's similar. It's like it's not made for a human constitution. I'm not sure how it would work.
So if anyone knows the question to this, because I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what would happen. Let's ask Rick. Let's tweet at him.
Rick, what happens if you give... It's like it's such a silly thing like to tweet a man. Hey, Rick, if you give a demigod like a blood transfusion to a mortal, would that mortal get superpowers? And just imagine Rick's like...
Or would they die?
I just like imagine like Rick just stops typing on his keyboard and is just like,
Like sighs heavily. Yeah, he's like, huh?
And then he starts going back to his keyboard. How can I put this into a book? Then Percy Jackson gave so-and-so a blood transfusion.
I guess there's just some answers we'll never know.
Percy Jackson figures out how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Did we get listener correspondence this week?
Yes, we actually got a lot of emails. Are you ready for this, B?
Yep, I'm ready when you're ready.
So from Tyson, hi Zack and B. First of all, I want to apologize for any spelling and grammar or punctuation mistakes I might have made, seeing as my native language isn't English. That's okay. I can barely put punctuations. I discovered your podcast only a few days ago, and I think it's absolutely amazing. It's really cool to see B's view on the books, not only as a first-time reader, but also as someone who has studied literature. Zach, congratulations from keeping B from spoilers. I definitely wouldn't have slipped up by now. I just can't stop myself when I talk about Riordan's work. I like the tangents you go on when you're suddenly so off topic that you're talking about half-human, half-corgi hybrids. By the way, you made me laugh out loud with that remark while I was on a plane full of people. At least 10 people looked at me like they just saw a pink poodle, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You bring up some really good points and wouldn't have thought of that way. The comparisons between other books, especially Harry Potter, are really accurate. I have my own theory about Gabe, which is really nerdy, but I embrace my inner fangirl. I'm only at episode 15, so you might have the answer already, but this is what really is relevant. Rick Riordan modeled every Percy Jackson book after some famous Greek hero. I'm not going to read that because that's kind of a spoiler.
Right, yeah, we talked about that.
Basically, in the myth of Perseus, some king wants to marry his mom, which she doesn't want, and Perseus protects her. So this king throws a banquet and demands everyone to bring him a gift. But Perseus is poor and doesn't have any money, so of course the king gets mad and Perseus promises to bring him anything that the king says. He wants Medusa's head. With the help of Athena, he does this. I'm pretty sure there's those flying shoes as well. He comes back and finds out that the king hasn't been exactly nice to his mom because she doesn't want to marry him. So he petrifies the king with the head of Medusa and they live happily ever after.
Oh, would you look at that? So it's pretty one-to-one with the story of Perseus.
That's actually really cool. I didn't know about that. I mean, I'm sure if I looked at the myths and stuff, I could find it, but it's like one of those things where it's like a needle in a haystack, or like trying to find a piece of hay in a needle stack. Anyway, keep up the great work, and sorry for the long explanation. No, we love that long explanation.
No, that was great. That's really interesting.
So we have another email from Liliana. Hi guys, I was just listening to your latest episode about the awful thing that likes to call itself the Percy Jackson movie. And you guys mentioned that Rick Riordan probably didn't even know about the film, but he actually did. I remember in a tweet, because he's asked about the movie a lot, poor guy, he mentions that he gave them suggestions before and while they were making the movie, but they completely ignored him. He even has more information in an FAQ under Movie Cat. Oh my god, he actually... Your movie must be that bad that the author actually has to have an FAQ apologizing for the movie. That's bad, B.
Yeah.
Liliana actually sent us the link to that. That'd be a fun little read to do eventually on the show. but we don't have as much time to do it right now. But I'm sure it's like I gave them the rights and they just wrote me a check. Anyway, I also really disliked the movie, and you guys pretty much said everything that needed to be said about it. I love the podcast, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on The Sea of Monsters. Sorry, B, there's another movie.
Yeah, sorry for me. We're going to watch it eventually. In another 6 months, I guess.
I guess when it comes to like movies and stuff, like authors hand their rights away because usually it's something that's optioned by their literary agent. It's not just them. So anyone can pick them up. It's like a bidding war at times, especially like with Percy Jackson. You know, it's really hard to like make a movie like this. And, you know, it's not the author's fault. I mean, yes, the author, you know, it is their property, so they might as well, you know, do their own version of it and maybe help them out. But if like the company is not going to listen to them, that's like, what's the point in trying to help them?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what happened with the Lemony Snicket movie, right, where they had Daniel Handler on as like a consultant, but then he kind of like, he always complains like specifically the story of him like having to pick like the shade of green that Lake Lachrymose was going to be, and he's like, I don't care about any of this.
Well, there's also, it's like, didn't he write a script originally and they laughed him right out of the building?
Yeah, basically I think that's what happened. So
which probably was, I've read snippets of it and it's very close to the Netflix series.
That's funny.
Like, there's certain aspects of it that made it all the way through to the Netflix series, though the spyglass is one of them.
Yeah, so he likes the spyglass thing.
So we have another email from Eleni. I apologize if we said your name wrong. Sometimes it's really hard. If people want to get their names right on the show, I recommend in the email possibly putting in how you would say it phonetically. I didn't send a message to the glass bottle this time. I used technology, LOL. I just wanted to talk to you about the last episode. I hate the movie as much as the next girl, but I think it's important to keep in mind that Disney passed on the film rights in 2004 before the actual first book was published. I can't speak for the time gap between 2005 and when the book was actually published and 2010 when the film was released. That being said, I'm going to redact this part. It is a terrible movie, but it has introduced many new readers to the actual book series, myself included. The funny thing is they tried to fix it in Sea of Monsters and only made it worse. Side note, The Last Airbender and The Vampire's Assistant are probably the two worst movie-to-book adaptations known to man. Also, in response to one of your previous episodes, I think the guy who plays Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be an awesome Hades. Keep staying mortal.
Oh, Tom Hiddleston?
Yeah, Tom Hiddleston. I think I remember I made the joke because that man's got like some like serious anime legs.
Yeah, he does have anime legs, you're right. I think he'd be a good Hades.
The problem though is like then you get like Tom Hiddleston typecast as like weird like
as that guy. Yeah, that's true. Also then you get like the weird Tom Hiddleston like stans who are just a little bit much sometimes.
Oh, you know, it's like that's why like when it comes to like movies and stuff, I would rather give people more chances, like new actors a chance, because it's like if you have the same 4 people in the same 8 movies, it gets really boring. That's why when I see like fan casts and stuff, I hate looking at them because it's like I want like this triple star actor to be in this movie. Like no, I don't really care.
Yeah, like more unknown people are kind of fun because then you can be more immersed in the story and less be like, oh look, it's...
Okay, if you had like Samuel L. Jackson as Zeus, you wouldn't think it's Zeus, you'd think it's Sam Jackson.
Do I look like a god to you? Do I look like a god?
Hold on to your butts as he throws a lightning bolt.
Say Master Bolt one more time.
So from Alyssa, Dear Zack and B, I loved your episode about the Lightning Thief movie. It has just voiced all of my complaints about this movie. I love your funny way to complain about a poorly made movie based off an amazing book. Are you guys gonna review the musical episode? It's honestly cheesy, but more true to the book than the movie. I really hope you do, and I really want to know what's your favorite songs. For me, mine's Good Kid, My Grand Plan, cheesy but good. Keep up the good work. I love the podcast and really hope you at least finish PGO. I wait eagerly for the next episode. Thanks, from Alyssa.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before on social media, but we're definitely trying to get something together for the musical. Try to figure out some sort of episode for that.
Because the problem with the musical is we could listen to the songs, but unfortunately, I can't speak for B, but for me, if it's a musical, I'd rather be able to see it and judge it that way because
yeah,
even with like the Cursed Child, people say, "Oh, it's such a good, I don't even care. It's a terrible play, and it's probably the only thing that would make it interesting is the spectacle of the effects they use." But for me, like when I want to judge a play or a musical, I'd rather see it like in its entirety rather than just listening to the songs.
I agree.
Because there's much more to it than just songs.
Is it still playing? I think it's on national tour now.
Yes, it's going on its national tour soon, but we are trying to figure out a way to hopefully be able to see it and talk about it. Like that's what kind of like the main thing, but we also have some other things in the works, so we'll get back to you there, but we do have plans to talk about the musical. We just have to figure out the best way to talk about it rather than these songs are good. I really like that auto-tuned high notes. Like you can't.
Yeah.
For me, I'd rather talk about it in a specific way, as every element in itself in a whole rather than just the music.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have like a bunch of wonderfully amazing reviews on iTunes. The first one I'll read. Words cannot describe this, from Emily Hart Dogs. That's actually the most purest name ever. Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are so amazing. I love listening to your podcast, and you show me things that I didn't see at first. The podcast makes me happy, whether it's a joke or you just lightening my mood, even if I'm sobbing over a dead character. I read the entire series, and I wish I could go back and read it for the first time. But your podcast seems almost like an entire different book because you bring so many different ideas into the fandom. Some people don't, but I love when you reference other books and movies. Sorry about this being so long, but I think you are so amazing. The podcast is the best. I have listened to every episode. My question for you is, what do you use to record your podcast? Thank you. Love, Haley.
We use different things to record.
Well, yeah, we use different things. Like if I went into it, it's like almost insane. Like for us, we record obviously over the internet. The way that we do it is we record remotely. We try to record each person's Skype call.
Yeah, or Discord. We've switched to Discord because I think it's a little bit better.
Oh, I like it. It's so much better. But, we also have different mics, and it's really an interesting challenge, but it's possible to do a podcast over the internet.
Yeah, sometimes the audio can be a little bit out of sync, but if your internet is okay, then it works out. God, I don't actually remember what brand my microphone is. It's on Amazon. Toner Professional Studio Condenser Microphone, Computer PC Microphone Kit with 3.5 millimeters XLR pop filter, scissor arm stand. It keeps going. It's very descriptive, but yeah, that's on the Amazon. That's connected to an XLR cable, which is then connected to an audio interface, like a Behringer audio interface.
It's almost like the old-timey skeleton song. Your mic's connected to the XLR cable. The XLR cable is connected to the audio interface. The audio interface is connected to the computer. But for me, I use a Shure SM7B with an audio interface and just right into my computer, and it's amazing. And it sounds...
Yeah, your new microphone is really great.
I spent a lot of money on it. If you're going to podcast a lot, you might as well, splurge a little bit.
Yeah, put an investment. Because
right now, I've sent B pictures of where I podcast, and I live in a closet.
Yeah, just surrounded by the foam. I'm currently, I think I mentioned this when I recorded Unfortunate Associates last night with Tyler, but I'm recording in a room that technically I'm not renting. So it's
Is it like a ghost room? Ooh.
Yeah, a secret unused room.
Oh, it's like in Coraline? It's you have to go through a little door?
Yes, exactly. You have to go through a little door. Yeah, technically it's, if we were to get another roommate, they would live in this room. But I go in here because the AC is too loud. And I can't turn off the AC because my hedgehog lives in that room and he needs to stay cool. So I sweat for the sake of podcasts.
So, we do this podcast out of love because we like to hang out with each other and talk about Percy Jackson, the book series that's near and dear to my heart. And we just love talking about books. And you know what? If any of you want to do a podcast, just send us a message and we'd love to give you assistance. If you have an idea and you have a voice and you really want to do it, let us know. We'll help you in any way, shape, or form that we can, even if it's just a shout out.
Yeah, definitely. I think people should podcast if they feel like they want to, because it's a fun thing. I'm glad I got into it. It seemed so intimidating before I started doing it, and now it's I can't imagine not podcasting all the time. Also, I lucked out because both my co-hosts ended up being really good friends of mine.
Aw, thank you. And you just
It's true.
My good friends, Tyler and Rosie. What?
Also Rosie. Rosie is our honorary third co-host.
It's an ensemble cast. We have Pfeffernuss and Rosie.
That's true. Well, Pfeffernuss doesn't really make noises. He runs on his wheel, and that makes a little bit of a squeaking noise if we don't oil it. And he makes sort of a chugga 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 noise when he drinks out of his water bottle.
B, do you want to read the next review?
Next review on iTunes is from Daughter of Aphrodite, who says, very intriguing. I just started listening today, and I've already watched 6 episodes. It's an amazing podcast. I will be listening to this for a while. Keep it up. That's very nice. Succinct. I don't know how you've been watching episodes. Are there secret video episodes?
So we have one more review, and this is like the most interesting out of all the reviews. And you know what? I appreciate the criticism. 3 stars from, I'm not even gonna like scream it. Hey guys, I like your show, but I'm giving it 3 stars because I have 2 complaints. 1, the advertising is a bit misleading. You say you'll be reading the chapter and automatically assume that you will read it on the show and then discuss it. Unfortunately, we are a read-along podcast. We're not doing a read with you podcast. The reason why is because we'll get like a nice little letter from Rick Riordan's lawyer saying, please stop this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they have audiobooks, so I think it's like copyright infringement for us to do that.
The whole point of the show is to do a read-along podcast and how you guys can read the book and then you can hear us talk about it and we can all be like a group of friends talking about it in a more detailed...
It's like a book club, sort of.
Yes. Which, there's a lot of people that do that. I've never heard of a podcast where, they read the book. We will pull quotes, but that's because it's technically fair use.
Yeah, unless it's LeVar Burton reads, but he gets the rights to read them because you have to like ask copyright if you can read a passage of a book.
No, not necessarily. As long as you're using it with fair use and you're talking about it in an academic format, we can use it. Yeah, and it's also not fun. How often would you guys want to like listen to us just read the book poorly? As a person that's dyslexic, it's not fun. And then the second complaint is Zack is pronouncing a lot of things wrong and it's driving me crazy. Anyway, good show overall. I never said that I was going to pronounce anything correctly, especially when it comes to Greek names, because you can interpret them differently. Now, the problem, though, is when it comes to me mispronouncing things, it's not all entirely it is my fault, but also it's like really hard to like interpret Greek words.
It's kind of ironic because we're talking about a book series that's about a character who has dyslexia, and the reason that he has dyslexia is because he has no problem reading Greek because his brain is like hardwired. I guess actual dyslexia isn't so much the case, and it can be really hard to like actually read those names and pronounce them correctly. And also, we don't really have a consensus on how some things are pronounced. I know that, I don't know, like names like Chiron or whatever, or like different like things like that. It's like, what do you even, I don't know.
I mean, there's Carrion and Chiron.
It's like, Charon and Chiron. Charon and Chiron, right?
They even make a joke about it in the book. I mean, the problem with it, though, is I think it is okay to mispronounce things as long as you give us the right way to say it.
Yeah.
Like, if there's, like, the phonetic way, yes, we will change what we're saying, but when you say it drives you crazy, when it comes to us mispronouncing things, I am so sorry about that. But, we also have, like, for me, unfortunately, I do have an accent, so sometimes I'll say things that might sound like a mispronunciation.
I have a bit of an accent too, actually, a bit of a New York accent on certain words. So I might be saying words wrong as well. But I'm sorry that bothers you, but thank you for listening to the show.
We appreciate that you listen to the show. We really do appreciate the criticism. If there are words that that do bother you, just email the show, radiocamphapplet@gmail.com, and explain to us which words we're getting wrong or I'm getting wrong, and we can correct that mistake. And that's pretty much all we can say about it. I mean, thank you for the review. We really appreciate you taking the time out. And we really appreciate, the criticisms because, you know what? That helps make our show much better than what we had originally. And that's what we try to strive for here is professional quality. That's what we try to do on the show. We're just not, if we're mispronouncing words or even mispronouncing names, I give you guys the right to call us out on it. Because then that means we'll be better on the next episode and we'll never get it wrong again. Like, I'm totally fine if people call you out as long as you help us with the calling out instead of just saying, hey, this is like annoys me because you keep mispronouncing words. Okay, what words are we mispronouncing so we can get them right the next time? Like
The specificity would be helpful.
yes. Like one of our listeners told me I was saying their name completely wrong. You know what? I've corrected that mistake.
Yep. We're all about learning and correcting ourselves gradually. So thanks for your review.
Thank you.
We'll try to get better.
We really appreciate the review. Let's just give like a little bit of a sneak peek or things that are going to be coming along the pipeline through our shows. We actually just recently did a bonus episode with the Real Weird Sisters that will be coming out hopefully soon. Unfortunately, by the time this episode's out, I will be at Midsummer Scream. I'm going to say it was probably the best time I've had this summer, getting spooky scary, recording podcast for my friend David King, who does Midnight Marinara, and my friend Jeff Tucker, who records the podcast 91 Reasons. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. Other than that, we do have some interviews hopefully coming up soon. We're trying to schedule some stuff. We want to thank our Patreon pledgers. We really appreciate that. We're at $20 a month. We've decided if we can get up to 40, which, will help us get new equipment and stuff. Mostly for B, because I don't... I've kind of maxed out.
I've
maxed out my budget. But what we're going to do, we've decided to do is, if we can get up to $40 a month, we will read Harry Potter for the show.
We will.
We'll do a bonus
read
episode
Harry Potter
once a month.
Wait, all of the Harry Potter?
Oh, yes, all of Harry Potter. We're not going to do it chapter by chapter. We're going to talk about them book by book.
We're going to do all the books, like one a month, you mean?
Yes, one a month.
Yeah. So that's basically our goal. So if you want to hear us finally read Harry Potter, all you guys sending us messages saying, hey, you guys should do a Harry Potter podcast. This is the closest you're going to get. So
by donating, helping our show, improve, we will give you guys much better in-depth content on Harry Potter rather than, hey guys, this is like Harry Potter, but then we'll be like, hey guys, this is like Percy Jackson, like in this one scene.
That's what we're totally going to do, because that's what we did in our Real Weird Sisters crossover episode. But and again, like on the Patreon, $40 a month is like the goal for all of the donations. So you could donate like $1 a month. You could donate, if you donate $10 a month, I'm making pins for anybody who does that. So that'll cover the cost of shipping. So that way I can make a little like shrink plastic pin with like a Radio Camp Half-Blood design on it. I'm still like working out the design for that.
Yes. And for the people that have donated to our Patreon, email us. I've tried emailing you guys before just to getting your like rewards and stuff. I'm not sure if it's gone through or not. Please email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. I'm not sure if like Patreon's messing up on sending you guys a message. Just email us and we can get you your Patreon rewards, because it's been like we want to give it to you.
Yeah, we want to hold up our side of the deal.
A friend of ours, and that's because they know us personally. And apparently they didn't get the message the first time.
If you're out there, if you donate to us, you want a pin. Well, I guess it's only if you're $10 a month, but still, look at the perks you get. Make sure you're getting all your perks.
I mean, only one person's really only donated $1, but for after that, you'll be able to get some amazing awards, such as you'll be able to get a 15-minute Q&A with us, where you get to email us like a list of questions you want, within reason, of course, and we'll, honestly, relay them back to you, and it'll be a super fun episode. Any higher, you'll be able to pick the book for the month that we read in a little book club that isn't just Percy Jackson.
Yeah, other YA stuff.
And we have such amazing awards, such as the camp pin, and we're going to start trying to do more raffles soon in the future. So by becoming a pledger, we can get some more amazing gifts, or we can make some handcrafted gifts. Like, I really want to get like a Cerberus sock puppet for myself.
Yeah, we're crafty folks. We could figure stuff out for bonus perks.
We also do have t-shirts.
We do. It's true. We do have merch. I feel like we should plug that more.
Yes, so if you want to buy a t-shirt from us and help support the show, we only have our one design up. We're looking for more designs, so if anyone has any, artistic skill, or even if you don't,
tweet us ideas, whatever. Let us know.
Tweet us ideas, or if you have like fan art that you've made of us, because that'd be so cool, just email us or tweet at us, and it might appear on a shirt.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to rep your Camp Half-Blood status.
I think that kind of like wraps up the show there, B.
Where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to tweet at the show, that's at halfblood_radio. Or if you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. Where can they find you, B?
And if you want to find me online, you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com. And on Twitter, I'm B. Kelly Gorman.
Well, I'm Zack.
And I'm B.
And keep staying mortal. Bye.
Bye, guys.